So first, I just want to thank each of you for taking the time to be here with us. We're going to be talking today about converting to modern UI. My name is Garrett Rochelle, Director of Growth here at Sprinterra. And as we recently saw 25R2 come out. This is, of course, a very timely webinar as 25R2 has modern UI in production for the first time as far as being generally available. One quick note I want to make is we are going to have a pretty robust question and answer session at the end. We have some really strong resources on the call today to be able to provide some answers. So from the Sprinterra side, we're going to have Andre, who's one of our technical leads and an Acumatica MVP, very much involved in the modern UI work that we've done to this point. And we also have from the Acumatica side, Todd Coons, VP of Services, and we also have Dhiren Chapkar, Director of Customization Services and Special Projects. So between myself, the Sprinterra team, and some folks from Acumatica, we hope to be able to answer as many of your questions as we can. So we will have a question and answer session at the end. So if you have any questions, please hold them for that time. With that, we'll go ahead and jump into our webinar. So first, just a high level look at the agenda. So we'll talk about a timeline of modern UI. We'll talk through some of the benefits. We'll tackle one of the most common questions that we're seeing, which is this just another upgrade? We'll talk through some of the details of converting customization. So we'll talk about fully custom screens. We'll talk about out-of-the-box screens that have been customized. We'll go through some of the test cases and experience we've gained at Sprinterra, some of the best practices that we've learned, that type of a deal. And then we'll close it out by opening it up for any questions that you have. So with that, let's go ahead and jump first into the timeline of modern UI. So modern UI first came out for managed availability in 25R1, which came out in Q1 of 2025. At that time, that's when some volunteers and some folks were started to get into modern UI to be able to provide some feedback, to test it, to provide some thoughts and ideas on the look and feel of modern UI. It's been in beta probably for a year and a half. It's been in the works for probably around 5 years. So really, it's a huge deal that is finally released and now out here in production in general availability here in 25R2, which was just released around a week or so ago. So that's very fresh, but it's now generally available in production as well. As far as timeline for converting and timeline for transitioning over, we do expect a fast-paced transition for current clients, which will include taking advantage of some of the new features of modern UI, some of the new features of AI that are out there. We don't have a definitive timetable yet. So for now, the official word is just that it'll be a fast-paced transition. As we learn more over the coming weeks and months, as far as a definitive timeline for expected transition time, that'll be something that we let you know as we learn more. On the flip side, for ISVs who are on the Acumatica marketplace, you can anticipate needing to have your product and solution ready for modern UI by the year end of 2025. Slightly different timetable, just because as ISVs and Sprinterra with our cache basis solution, our property management solution, we've had to work on this as well. But we need to have our solutions and products ready for clients whenever they move, whether it's sooner or later. So end of 2025 is what we're targeting for ISVs who are on the Acumatica marketplace as far as having our solutions ready for modern UI. So next, let's take a high-level look at some of the benefits that are going to come with modern UI. First, we just want to talk about the cleaner screens at a glance. So in general, the user interface is much more streamlined, much cleaner. It looks newer, it looks better. It's also going to give you the ability to personalize your screens without customization. So if you start to think of some of the standard kind of quality of life improvements that you may have needed or may have wanted in the past, whether it's moving tabs around on a screen, whether it's moving the way that fields are laid out on a screen, in some case, maybe taking a field off of a screen or adding a field to a screen. Many of those types of things in the past have all required customizations. So even if it's a low code customization, it's still something in which you needed to go into the customization project editor, you needed to make the changes, you needed to publish that to your tenant, and then you needed to maintain that. Going forward, these are going to be just settings that you can change. So directly on the screen, whether it's through a settings toggle switch or whether it's through drag and drop, you're going to have different types of functionality to be able to personalize what you're seeing on the screen much more easily, as opposed to having to do it through a customization project. So that's going to be a huge win for us. Additionally, it's going to be faster on your day to day. So the original estimates put out by Acumatica was around a 10% on average increase in your speed. Obviously, it's been out for just a week to 2 weeks at this point, so it's still pretty new. So whether or not those numbers are going to be increased or slightly altered, not entirely sure, but you can expect the system to be snappier, the system to respond more quickly, to open up new pages more quickly, those types of things. And directly related to that is you're going to be able to find data faster. So if you're opening a dashboard, if you're clicking through a dashboard to get to the underlying data, anything like that, you're going to be able to do it more quickly. So in general, the system is going to get quicker. The system is going to turn around your request more quickly. And then finally, the flexible interface adapts seamlessly for any device. So whether you're working on your computer, whether you're working on your iPad, you're working on a mobile device, the new flexible user interface is going to appear very, very well regardless of which direction you're looking at it from, regardless of what type of device you're looking at it from or working on. You're going to have a seamless transition working on the web, working on your mobile device, or whatever the case may be. And this brings us to probably the most common question that we've encountered as we've started to get into modern UI, started to help clients, started to help VARs and ISVs with these modern UI conversations. So is this just another upgrade? And the short answer is, for most of us, it's not. For most of us, there's going to be an additional level of effort. So the one exception to that rule is going to be if you're using all out of the box functionality and you have no customizations, just plain vanilla Acumatica, all of the standard features and functions that you're using in your day-to-day business, then your upgrade process will look pretty similar to what you're used to seeing. Kind of the big variable is going to be whether or not you have customizations in place that are going to need to be converted to the modern UI. So I'd say that means most of us are going to have a slightly different upgrade process. For most of us, there will be additional steps required to make sure all of your customizations, all components of those customizations are ready for the modern UI and have been converted over to the modern UI correctly. So for that majority of us who have customizations in place, who have maybe created entirely new screens in Acumatica, entirely new processes, anything like that, there are going to be a couple of different paths for managing those customizations to make sure that they're correctly and completely translated over to the modern UI. And this is where we introduced the Acumatica conversion tool, which is going to be a big part of this process. And this is something that we'll talk about a little more on each of the next couple of slides, but this is a tool that Acumatica has created and Acumatica provides to facilitate these conversion processes. So we'll jump to the next couple of slides. We're going to look at a couple different scenarios. We'll look at, first, we'll look at, in managing our customizations, we'll look at fully custom screens. So these are going to be screens that do not exist natively in Acumatica. Maybe it's something that you created from scratch or you had created from scratch for you. But this is the first scenario we'll look at. So in the original iteration of the conversion tool, which was built by Acumatica, the fully custom screens are what it was built for. So originally, that's what it was built for. This is where it works best. And essentially what this conversion tool does for these fully custom screens is it generates the TypeScript and the HTML files from the original .aspx files. And for the simpler versions of these screens, so for the less complex version of these screens, in many cases, it can be a very comprehensive approach to managing these. As you get into the more complex, fully custom screens, Our best practice approach, and this comes from some of the tests that we've done, some of the customizations of our own that we've converted over working with clients. Our best practice approach is to do a line by line review, which compares the original ASPX file against the converted TypeScript and HTML, especially for the more complex screens. So this is where we start to see some manual effort required in addition to just purely using the conversion tool, is for the slightly more complex versions of these customizations. So if you have a very simple, very straightforward customization in which it's fully custom screens, the conversion tool can do most, if not all, of that conversion work. As the screens become more complex and there's more layers to the customizations, this is where the conversion tool is great for taking some of the initial steps and getting you the bulk of the way there. But there's still some manual effort required. A couple of examples that we found that are fairly common are, in some cases, you still need to update formatting. In some cases, there are control ID mismatches. There could be excessive code fragments. There could be missing logic, just to name a couple of them. But again, these are some of the exceptions, and these are as you get into the more complex customizations. This is where you start to see the conversion tool to be used in conjunction with a fair amount of manual effort, as opposed to just doing all of the work for you. So this is the fully custom screens. These are not screens that would originally exist out of the box in Acumatica. They're screens that we've built or you've built custom specifically for you. And this is where the conversion tool can be very effective. Now, the second scenario that we want to talk about is out of the box screens that have then been customized. So in beta testing and in beta versions, these out of the box customized screens were not very compatible with the Acumatica conversion tool. However, per the 25R2 release notes that are very freshly out there, there are some new options as far as the conversion tool working with these out of the box yet customized screens. So there is more functionality available to us now. So converting these screens, so if they're out of the box and they've then been customized as opposed to just being fully custom, converting these screens is going to require a little more manual effort as opposed to the fully custom screens. That's something that we're finding. But the basic process, so down here on the right side, we've kind of summarized it. The basic process is going to be use the conversion tool to convert the screen without customizations, then use the tool to convert the screen with customizations, and then you're going to compare the difference and you're going to make the appropriate changes manually. Just for reference, this is found in the latest release notes, specifically in the portion related to modern UI on page 77. So it's going to have a full write-up of that, and we'll likely be able to talk about this in a little more detail, either in the QA session or in one-on-ones to follow. But as a general expectation for fully custom screens, you can expect it's going to be most, if not all, handled by the conversion tool with maybe a bit of manual effort. For the out-of-the-box screens, which have then been customized, you can expect to use the conversion tool for a big portion of that, but there's going to be a larger manual effort that's required in follow-up to that to make sure that they're converted over fully and completely. So with that, I want to take this into some of the test cases that we've had. So and talk about some real life examples. So we've dedicated probably more than the last 6 months to testing and preparing for the modern UI here at Sprinterra. So again, this includes our ISV solutions. So that's cache basis, that's property management. We've tested converting those. We've worked with clients that we have to convert their customizations. And we've also worked on some of our own internal customizations that we built for our own Acumatica instance and converting those as well. And in those scenarios, from the experience that we've gained, we have a couple of key points that we want to share with you. So the first one is that the conversion tool tends to work best, most optimally for fully custom screens and for simpler screens. So if you're converting over customizations related to fully custom screens, if it's a simpler customization, this is where the conversion tool is at its best and can take the largest portion of that process. But it's important to note that with that said, converting customizations to modern UI is not hands off. It's not just a plug and play where you plug it into the conversion tool, you hit a button and it's done. There is going to be some level of manual effort that's involved, depending upon the complexity of the customization that you have and the volume of customizations that you have. So we wanted to put this into perspective a bit with kind of a real life example. So with some of the testing that we've done with our clients, we chose an example customization here, which impacts 20 total screens. So this is a fairly complex customization in the sense that many customizations are going to be less invasive than this, but this customization impacts 20 total screens, of which 10 of them are fully custom screens, 10 of them are out of the box screens which have been modified. So in this scenario, the standard upgrade for this customization would maybe take 4 to 6 development hours. So this is just for the standard backend upgrade. If we look at the modern UI transition piece of this, this is taking 40 to 50 hours. So on average, it's 1 to 2 hours per fully custom screen. And then it's 3 to 4 hours per out of the box screen, which has then been modified. So again, this is just an example. It can vary a bit as far as the how many hours for your standard backend upgrade as opposed to how many hours for your modern UI transition. But this is fairly representative of a lot of what we've seen in transitioning customizations from classic to modern. Is standard upgrades around 4 to 6, and then conversely, the modern UI transition is around 40 to 50, which breaks down to 1 to 2 hours per fully custom screen, 3 to 4 hours per out of the box screen, which has been modified. So with that, I do want to open it up for any questions that we have. Again, we do have one of our technical leads here from Sprinterra who was very involved with going through some of our real life scenarios here, very involved in that testing. So if you have any questions there, please feel free to bring them through here. Also, if you have any more general questions about modern UI, kind of what to expect, what's coming down the pipeline, anything like that, you can also feel free to ask those questions here as well. So you can either put them in the chat or you can come off of mute at this point, ask the question, and then we'll go from there. And with that, I noticed that we have some questions in the chat here. So let's take a look at those. Okay, looks like some note takers. It is also worth noting that Alex Mishker from the Sprinterra team has shared a link in the chat. If you have any follow-up questions, if you want to schedule any time with us to be able to get together in the future to talk through anything that we've discussed today, any further questions about the modern UI, you can use the link that's been presented in the chat to do that as well.
Garrett,
okay, so
question in the
yeah, so one question I see in the chat is how are we handling billing to clients and whether or not we're passing on the entire 50 hours to the client. So this is something that we're still figuring out. This is obviously a large level of effort, and it's not something that the client is going to very easily sign up for. So we're still figuring out. We've handled that in a couple of different ways. Some of the initial clients that we've worked with, it's been a great learning experience for us. So we've been a little flexible in how we're approaching that. But in the long run, the fact of the matter is that the modern UI transition is something that's very important. It's going to be very valuable to the client. So it's something that's going to provide a great value to them. There is the one-time hurdle of there's a decent level of effort in order to get from point A, which is on classic UI, to point B, which is on modern UI. And there is a cost associated with that. So right now, we're still figuring out the best way to approach that. We are doing our best to be flexible, but ultimately, it's a great value that's being provided. It's just a matter of figuring out, how to kind of juggle that and how to shift it around where it makes sense for everyone.
Garrett, hi, this is Dhiren. Just one comment on out-of-the-box customized screens. So Acumatica is investigating in providing converter so that it can automatically convert and produce the TypeScript file and the HTML. It's work in progress. There is no timeline I would want to highlight over here, but it's work in progress and the help is gonna be on the way. Okay.
Got it. Yeah, thank you, Dear. And that's a great point as well. We're still probably, so 25R2 has just come out, so we're still probably at least a month, if not more, from kind of the initial wave of clients beginning to be ready to move over. So Acumatica is working very diligently on the conversion tool to continue to expand functionality, as evidenced by the fact that when we started preparing for this webinar, the fully custom screens were the main focus. By the time this webinar has happened today, there's already more functionality available for converting those out of the box screens that are customized. By the time we get to beginning of 2026, when we start to see the first waves of our clients moving over, there's likely going to be new functionality there as well from Acumatica. So that's something to keep a close eye on, and we'll stay in close touch with Acumatica on that as new functionality comes out, as new efficiencies are gained, to be able to make these conversions happen with as little amount of effort manually as possible. There's always going to be some manual portion, but they are continually working to improve that process. And we're also working on the Sprinterra side to continue to gain efficiencies and figure out the best way that we can convert these customizations. So it certainly a work in process. It's still new, but there should be continued improvements over the next couple of months.
There is another question, Garrett.
So next question we have in chat is, with some of the modified from stock screens, are you finding it might be easier to start over and rebuild from the modern UI interface versus trying to convert a classic screen customization? This is a great question. Andre or Alex, do we have an answer on this one?
Andre, so I think, not sure if you can answer specifically about stock screens, but maybe starting over versus converting from existing screen. Can you try to answer that?
I'd say in 98% of times it's better to start with converting and then go from there. Most of the times, again, it depends on how customized the screen is on your instance, and for easier conversions that are not as intrusive, as they will be converted with a conversion tool, and you don't need to add any manual changes to that. But anyway, even if you need any more additional changes, it's easier to start with something that a conversion tool generated for you, because it will create, I'd say, a good starting point, so you will save a lot of hours, development hours from there.
And as for existing modified screen, Andre, if you have heavily modified existing screen?
Still, I'd say it's easier for you to start with a conversion tool and then look at the changes and use it as a guideline and fill up. Even if there are some mishaps or something is missing from the logic, it's easier to feel what converter generated for you, that boilerplate, than start it from scratch.
I would agree with what Andres just mentioned. I think, you can use the converter tool as a base and, do the fine tuning to reduce, the manual effort.
Yeah. So to summarize, in the vast majority of cases, in nearly all cases, it's going to make the most sense to use the conversion tool and then manually review and potentially fill in some of the gaps as opposed to building from scratch. Next question that we have is, is there an end of life date for the classic UI? I'm not currently aware of one. The most recent that we've heard is just that we're going to be pushing pretty aggressively to get clients onto the the modern UI, but we don't have an exact date. If anyone here has a Dear and Todd, if you have anything additional to add to that, but as of right now, it's just there is going to be a concerted push to move to modern UI, but we don't have an exact date, at least on the Sprinterra side, for when classic UI may be at end of life.
I think based on what I have, what I know, the current tentative plan is around 26 R2, but that's subject to change. That is,
Good.
I wouldn't give, any a firm answer on this. This is tentative.
Got it. Thanks, Dear.
Yeah, and the only thing I will say, this is Todd, the only thing I will say is that I think right now, again, how quickly can we adopt to the new UI? I think there's a lot of benefits. I think we're going to see a big push to get to the new UI, especially with all the AI tools and everything else, and the simplicity and more of the user being, low code, no code stuff that's there. So I think there's going to be a big push, but I think if we get into this and then there's some hiccups for whatever reasons, it is software, but if we run into some stuff, I know in the past Acumatica has delayed some of those decisions. So I think we're going to wait and see what the rest of this year looks like and how many customers get moved and upgraded, and then make that final decision.
Got it. Thanks, Todd. All right, then the next question that we have is, and this may be for you, Andre, but the question is, have you guys converted partial packages to modern and kept some in classic? And does that then require 2 packages? So maybe sales order customization package is in modern, but bills is still in classic for whatever reason.
You don't need to have 2 separate packages for that. Modern UI allows you to select whether or not you want the particular screen in modern UI or classic UI on a per screen basis. So as long as you have your customized screen, for example, sales order customized in the package to modern UI, you're free to select modern UI and classic UI. So in your cases, on this particular scenario, you can convert your sales order customization to a modern UI and then switch whether or not you like modern UI or you want to roll back to classic UI if there are some kind of issues with that. And bills, you just keep it as is. You don't need to make any changes to that, publish this package, and all you have is when you will try to switch to modern UI bills, there won't be any changes that you made in your customization. That's it. So yeah, it's doable.
Got it. Thanks, Andre. Okay, perfect. Well, again, really appreciate the time that each of you made to be here with us. If you have any questions that come up in the future, you can reach out to us here. You can reach out to me directly, garrett.rochelle@sprinterra.com, and we'll be happy to help in any way that we possibly can. So thanks again, and you all have a great day.